This is a dramatization of an article dated December 3, 2019, in The Independent, written by Slavoj Žižek entitled, "There is no conflict between the struggle against antisemitism and the struggle against Israeli occupation." Bear in mind these views do not necessarily represent those of The Independent, this channel, nor, and it should be noted that this is meant not just in jest but also in truth, by Slavoj Žižek himself. Without further ado, here is Slavoj Žižek as voiced by this channel's creator, the Mad Adam.
Sartre wrote that, if you are attacked for the same text by both sides in a political conflict, this is one of the few reliable signs that you are on the right path. In the last decades, I have been attacked by a number of very different political actors, often on account of the same text, for antisemitism, up to advocating a new Holocaust, and for perfidious Zionist propaganda.
See the last issue of the Anti-Semitic Occidental Observer.
So I think I've earned the right to comment on the recent accusations against the Labour Party regarding its alleged tolerance of antisemitism. I, of course, indisputably reject antisemitism in all its forms, including the idea that one can sometimes, quote, understand, end quote, it, as in.
Considering what Israel is doing on the West Bank, one shouldn't be surprised if this gives birth to antisemitic reactions.
More precisely, I reject the two symmetrical versions of this last argument.
We should understand occasional Palestinian antisemitism since they suffer a lot.
As well as,
we should understand aggressive Zionism in view of the Holocaust.
One should of course also reject the compromise version.
Both sides have a point, so let's find a middle way.
Along the same lines, we should supplement the standard Israeli point that the permissible critique of Israeli policy can serve as a cover for the unacceptable antisemitism with its no less pertinent reversal. The accusation of antisemitism is often invoked to discredit a totally justified critique of Israeli politics. Where, exactly, does legitimate critique of Israeli policy become antisemitism? More and more, mere sympathy for the Palestinian resistance is condemned as antisemitic. Take the two-state solution. While decades ago it was the standard international position, it is more and more proclaimed a threat to Israel's existence and thus antisemitic. Things get really ominous when Zionism itself evokes the traditional antisemitic cliché of roots. Elaine Finkielkraut wrote in 2015 in a letter to Le Monde,
"The Jews, they have today chosen the path of rooting."
It is easy to discern in this claim an echo of Heidegger, who said, in a Der Spiegel interview, that all essential and great things can only emerge from our having a homeland, from being rooted in a tradition. The irony is that we are dealing here with a weird attempt to mobilize antisemitic cliches in order to legitimize Zionism. Antisemitism reproaches the Jews for being rootless. Zionism tries to correct this failure by belatedly providing Jews with roots. No wonder many conservative antisemites ferociously support the expansion of the State of Israel. However, the trouble with the settlement project today is that it is now trying to get roots in a place which was for thousands of years inhabited by other people. That's why I find obscene a recent claim by Ayelet Shaked, the former Israeli justice minister.
The Jewish people have the legal and moral right to live in their ancient homeland.
What about the rights of Palestinians? For me, the only way out of this conundrum is the ethical one. There is ultimately no conflict between the struggle against antisemitism and the struggle against what the State of Israel is now doing on the West Bank. The two struggles are part of one and the same struggle for emancipation. Let's mention a concrete case. Some weeks ago, Zara Sultana, a Labour candidate, apologized for a Facebook post in which she backed the Palestinian right to, quote, violent resistance, end quote.
I do not support violence and I should not have articulated my anger in the manner I did, for which I apologize.
I fully support her apology. We should not play with violence, but I nonetheless feel obliged to add that what Israel is now doing on West Bank is also a form of violence. No doubts that Israel sincerely wants peace on the West Bank. Occupiers by definition want peace in their occupied land, since it means no resistance. So if Jews are in any way threatened in the UK, I unconditionally and unequivocally condemn it and support all legal measures to combat it. But am I permitted to add that Palestinians in the West Bank are much more under threat than Jews in the UK, without mentioning Corbyn by name? The chief rabbi Ephraim Mervis recently wrote in an article for The Times that
a new poison, sanctioned from the top, has taken root in the Labour Party.
He conceded,
"It is not my place to tell any person how they should vote,"
though went on to add,
"When December 12th arrives, I ask every person to vote with their conscience. Be in no doubt, the very soul of our nation is at stake."
I find this presentation of a political choice as a purely moral one ethically disgusting. It reminds me of how, decades ago, the Catholic Church in Italy did not explicitly order citizens to vote for Christian democracy, but just said that they should vote for a party which is Christian and democratic. Today, the charge of antisemitism is more and more addressed at anyone who deviates from the acceptable left liberal establishment towards a more radical left. Can one imagine a more repellent and cynical manipulation of the Holocaust? When protests against the Israel Defense Forces activities in the West Bank are denounced as an expression of antisemitism, and, implicitly, at least, put in the same line as Holocaust deniers, that is to say, when the shadow of the Holocaust is permanently evoked in order to neutralize any criticism of Israeli military and political operations, it is not enough to insist on the difference between antisemitism and the critique of particular measures of the State of Israel. One should go a step further and claim that it is the State of Israel that, in this case, is desecrating the memory of Holocaust victims, ruthlessly using them as an instrument to legitimize present political measures. As Mervis wrote, "The soul of our nation is indeed at stake here, but also the soul of the Jewish nation. Will Jews follow Finkielkraut and take roots, using their sacred history as an ideological excuse, or will they remember that ultimately we are all strangers in a strange land? Will Jews allow Israel to turn into another fundamentalist nation-state, or remain faithful to the legacy that made them a key factor in the rise of modern civil society? Remember that there is no enlightenment without the Jews." For me to fully support Israeli politics in the West Bank is a betrayal not just of some abstract global ethics, but of the most precious part of Jewish ethical tradition itself.
This was a dramatization of an article dated December 3, 2019, in The Independent, written by Slavoj Žižek entitled, "There is no conflict between the struggle against antisemitism and the struggle against Israeli occupation." Bear in mind these views do not necessarily represent those of The Independent, this channel, nor, and it should be noted that this is meant not just in jest but also in truth, by Slavoj Žižek himself. We appreciate your attention and welcome your considered responses down in the comments. Perhaps it is right to consider how this article, merely 3 years old, addresses a country in the grips of a reinvigorated leadership with a very strong approach to, quote, taking root, end quote. What do you think? Is it anti-Semitic to question, quote, Zionism, end quote? Does there seem to be a conflict between the popular sentiment of anti-Semitism among the modern American right wing and its popular support of the nation of Israel? Please consider your tone as you reply. This is a fraught subject, and yet, we are more than capable of tackling such subjects with civility. It is true that there is no way to speak of violence without speaking violence, but we can do our best to engage the less pathological and more rational sides of our consciousness to bring about fruitful knowledge. Please also remember to like, subscribe, and do all of the other YouTube things if you like what we've done here and would like to see more of it.